meeting of the Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee, and I'm going to take the roll. Committee Member Somsich.
Here.
Councillor Cook.
Here.
Public Works Director Peter Rice.
Here.
Committee Member Charette.
Here.
Committee Member O'Brien.
Here.
Committee Member D'Antonio. Absent. Committee Member Rooney is absent. And I'm John Tabor. Our business tonight is really getting ready for the June event. Great chance for us to build public awareness around community power. And Peter, you may not be aware, but Portsmouth Smart Growth reached out and said they really want their agenda this year to be climate change. And they wanted to feature us and have an info event. And I said, sure, let's do that. And so we talked about using 3S as the venue. And we talked about lining up some speakers. Henry Herndon from the Community Power Coalition. And we thought Julia Griffin would be a good speaker, not only because she was in on the ground floor of the coalition, but Hanover has set very ambitious climate goals. And she very much sees what they're doing with community power as part and parcel of their aggressive goals to be carbon neutral. And at this point, I think our third speaker was going to be Sam Evans-Brown. We're waiting to hear from Tom Rooney about that. If not, I think another speaker we could substitute in would be the consumer advocate, whose name I can't remember right now, but
Don Crease.
Don Crease, who's got an interesting take on community power. So we managed to align on a date of June 29th, which works for those speakers. And 3S is offered generously to host a dinner beforehand for the speakers. And then we had a little working group comprised of Tom and Peter and Becca and I and Kevin to work on some of the planning and getting the messaging out. And we hit on the idea of using the city's water bills, which is a mailing of 8,500 homes, to really drive awareness of the event. And the remarkable quick study and graphic abilities of Becca came into play, and she came up with this.
It's hard to fit on one page.
So I circulated that as a draft to everybody. I think if you have comments, you can give them to us, and then we could go back and adjust a little bit, but rather than edit as a committee, just thought I'd get any comments that people have.
I just had two little things that I noticed reading through it. The first paragraph, or the sentence ends, their electricity supply comes. I think comes from.
Sorry, Peter, say that again. I'm
Sorry. So that is a sentence that says community power empowers towns and cities and counties to choose where their electricity supply comes.
Comes
And ends there.
from.
Comes from, right? That's probably what we want to say.
Or just say the source of their electricity.
Right, or you could say it differently, but
Yeah, we're
something's missing.
Yeah.
Got it.
Ending a sentence with a preposition is something
That's
up with
usually-
which I will not put.
I will not, I can't stand for it, so,
yeah.
yeah, we'll change it to source.
And then I think in the column on the left, at the bottom where it says community power offers several benefits for residents and businesses, including, and it lists a number of things. above it, we talk about the main components of community power, and we mention value-added products and services, but we don't mention that as a benefit.
Yep,
So maybe somehow that should be part of the benefit, too.
move it down. Okay, just make sure it's
You can purchase
consistent.
products or services as one of the benefits you can get. So
Okay.
those are the only two things I saw, just going through it for the first time.
Perfect.
I had a note from Ben D'Antonio, who said, he's a little concerned about promising that will always be lower rates.
Yes.
However, I did learn, Kevin told me today, CPC&H will not launch unless they're lower than the utility default rate.
Yeah, and I think that is their goal, but that doesn't necessarily mean steady state they're going to be
Right.
lower. So I think we have an opportunity to tweak that a little bit here.
But Kevin, is that, when they say they won't launch unless they have a lower rate, is that for equivalent power?
Yes.
So if they get, let's say, a green power proposal that's maybe a penny more, that wouldn't be enough for them to launch. They would have to get a dirty power quote that's lower than the regular utility default
My
rate.
understanding is same renewable content, which is whatever, 22, 23%.
Content.
The equal content, the comparable to the default rate would, for go live, they would,
Yeah,
they
they would
want it to
want
be
to have-
lower. But I agree with Ben that I'd be careful with the
Promising
wording
that.
here. I would, and I have a few comments, but I'll
Yeah,
get
no.
when you're all set.
Yeah.
That's all I was
Okay.
going to ask you about.
Yeah.
Something maybe like striving for, just to sort of couch it in, like we're aiming for it to be lower default, but striving for, something like that.
Yeah, so I'm finished, Jeff.
So, and I think Ben also had the thing around it being a voluntary program. So just starting there, it technically is voluntary because you can opt out, but I think, I think most folks voluntary means, they would have to take steps to participate, and we know that that's not the approach. So just, a potential way to word this would be that Portsmouth, scratch that this is a voluntary program and start the sentence, Portsmouth residents can take advantage of this pooled supply or opt to stay with, and I don't think we need to say current utility for Portsmouth, it's all Eversource. I think we can stay with Eversource. And the other thing I think we need to tack in here is, or their existing third-party electric supplier, because while there's minimal number of people that are with a competitive supplier right now, they're not all with Eversource. So again, I would say Portsmouth residents can take advantage of this pooled supply, or, and you get the word opt in there, opt to stay with Eversource or their existing third-party electric supplier. Because then I think that's a little more honest and accurate than saying that it's,
Yeah,
Then
we
it's-
got to be transparent.
yeah.
We could also replace the voluntary with Portsmouth residents will be offered an opportunity, or stay with what they have. So it's another way of phrasing it.
Yeah, no, I think, I think
Either way.
Kevin's got the,
Yeah.
Just one comment. The word "can" implies, again, it's an active thing. You can do it, not as Portsmouth will,
Yeah.
or you can opt out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're definitely going to have to layer on more, discrete language as the education program rolls out.
yeah,
So I think we can build,
Yeah.
on it. But, so I agree with you, Peter, but I just wouldn't lead with it's a voluntary program, because that,
yeah, no, that was
Right,
a,
yeah.
yeah, for most of us, that's like volunteering to give blood.
Provide a choice,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
that was my,
It's a great
my
catch.
formulation, and I kind of
Yeah.
No,
missed the
it's okay.
mark on that.
It's all right.
So,
And the only other comment I had, where in the sub-bullets down below where it says it's the benefits, instead of saying lower cost, I would suggest we say competitive and stable rates. because
Stable is important.
there is a reference to lower cost in the table, in the chart, but it says that was specific to what Mass, New York, and California demonstrated. So it implies that there's examples of lower costs in these other states, but I think we'd be safer saying competitive and stable rates as opposed to the benefits are lower cost, because who's not going to want lower cost if that's a guarantee from Community Power? And because my concern is they're going to go live with, they're not going to go live unless they're lower than default rate, because they know what default rate is. The utilities are going to publish it in December. They're going to go out to bid. They're going to make sure that it's going to be lower. They're going to go live in April, all right? The utilities then set their summer rate, and the utility summer rates are always lower than the winter rates. So I would not be surprised that they go live with a rate that's lower than default service, but only 3 short months later, the utility rates are going to be lower than the coalition's rate.
Because that's the winter rate in between.
Yeah,
winter
they're going
and
to beat
summer
the
rate.
winter rate,
So every 6 months. they
but
change
when
it.
the utilities reset for August through January, or July through January, I think there's a probability that they're going to fall above the utility rate. So, you know.
It's going to kind of do one of these.
Yeah, but I think what their goal is that over time, they will always be competitive
And
with
stable.
default service and stable, albeit they want to go live with a lower rate. I think from a marketing perspective, they want to go live with a lower rate. So I would just think there's a
What if we just said competitive rates?
competitive rates, yeah.
Shorter.
Yep,
Okay,
yeah.
perfect.
And then
The stability is really critical too, especially, now where we see all the fuel prices are so dynamic all over the place. Offering people some stability in that is also a marketing plus. Because for example, if you can lock in a summer rate for 3 years, that gives you some stability, even if the rates go up and down. So I think we should be shooting for some stability for people, because that's a real selling point, as well as the price.
Right.
I think they intend to use, one of the things, they want to build up a reserve.
Yep.
And that reserve would be used for, unexpected cost and projects, but I think they're also, that communities could use their reserve to potentially soften what would be a rate increase.
Stabilize the rates.
To stabilize, kind of soften it over time. I think that's one of the objectives of the reserve that they plan to develop. But that would be over time. I mean, the reserve isn't going to appear out of the air. It's going to take time to build up.
Yeah, I mean, right now, any near-term purchases starting up is going to be really expensive. I mean, the markets right now are, what, 40% above last year's? They've gone up, and the predictions I've seen for buying future energy for 23, 24, are 20 to 30% above.
Yeah.
And so my heartburn, as I've expressed to you, is all about portfolio management. How they manage risk. When you talk about stability, that means you're buying future, and how far in advance. If you're buying 2 years out, you don't get that power until 2 years. So what are you going to do in the near term?
Yeah.
If you're buying today's market, it's going to be really expensive.
Yeah. Maybe just stick with competitive rates.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then we might have to unpack all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to unpack even the costs when you're talking about unequal content,
Yeah.
So we're going to get into that at some point
Yeah.
too, but if we start splitting things up too
Yeah.
early, people will get confused.
I just don't want to see a resident 6 months from now, 9 months from now, pulling this out and saying, hey, lower cost,
Yeah, no, you're right.
you guys.
And Ben has the same concern.
Yeah. And then the only other two things that in the Make Your Voice Heard, it says that that we're working with the city and a variety of community stakeholders to formulate a plan. Should we say something about, and also something around further educating, right? Because we're not just developing a plan, but we're going to be taking steps over the coming months to further inform, further educate.
You could say something like, over the coming months, community engagement, education, as well as formulating the aggregation plan, something like that.
Yeah, I think your sentence is great, but it is working with the city and a variety of communities to formulate a plan and to further communicate with Portsmouth residents, or something like that. I don't know.
And continue the dialogue.
Continue dialogue with, yeah. And then it seems like we have a great opportunity to link to the web here.
Well, that's the UR.
That's to link to the Portsmouth web, city web?
That is a
Or to the event.
screenshot of a blank QR code that I took.
An example of
So
what a
we've still
QR
got
code looks
some-
like.
Right, real QR code will go here.
Yeah.
Stephanie's been great. We've got some questions to be answered before
Oh,
this
perfect.
goes.
So this goes, well, maybe we need some language, though, because this is pointing them to sign up for this event, go to this QR.
Right.
But maybe for more information,
Yeah.
to visit the Portsmouth web, where we have FAQs and whatever else.
Well, you could, I assume you'd use that to sign up for the event, too, so it'd be a combined one?
I was thinking it'd all be on one page.
Yeah. One landing page.
Yeah, and we always put the URL in as well for people who don't do QR.
But if we
Which
said,
is-
to get more information as well as to sign up for the event,
Yeah.
go here.
Yep, so that would be, the intent was that link brings you to the Community Power page that's currently
Right.
on the website.
Right.
And it would be the same QR code at the very top of the page too, so
Yeah.
that if,
Yeah. But of the 8,500 folks, I think the majority, unfortunately, aren't going to go to the event, but they might still go to the landing page to find more information out about community power. You know? Good.
And we've got a link for Mayor's Blue Ribbon Portsmouth Energy Advisory Committee. Maybe we just put in URL.
the URL, yeah,
Because this is hard copy.
yeah.
Well,
I know you've had to
No,
drop back 20 years.
No, it's fine. It's funny when I copy and paste from a URL, it puts it in it names what it is.
Okay,
So I have to just right-click and say,
got it.
tell me exactly where to go, www.l, yeah,
Right.
www, yeah.
And then we
This
can
looks great.
have that landing page
Yeah,
feature the event.
perfect.
I'm kind of always a stickler for making sure that any kind of announcement or anything that we want participation in has a phone number too. Okay? Because some people are still old-fashioned, and it's nothing like picking up the phone and talking to somebody and asking questions instead of looking at a website or something and getting confused. So we should try to have as many ways of communicating as possible, and that should include a phone number. The other thing is, and I
Well,
didn't...
let me,
Whose phone number would it be?
Well, I'm not suggesting who's, I thought Peter Rice's, but. No, I'm not suggesting any number at this point. I'm just suggesting that there be a number that people can call if they have questions and want to talk to somebody about it specifically. And then the second thing I was going to bring up, and I haven't gone through this thoroughly, but I think we need to avoid jargon that not everybody knows what it is. Like, for example, load. Not everybody will immediately know what they're talking about. I mean, people who are involved in this kind of
Yeah.
stuff, they know what they're talking about, but we should make sure that the language, if it contains in the technical terms, that we give also a simple definition or in brackets say,
Yep.
usage or users or whatever, but something that's very simple to understand. So we don't want to get caught up in the terminology as much as the idea.
Most of this seems fairly,
Yeah, most of it is.
Generic,
Yeah, most
yeah,
of
I
it is.
thought it was
Yeah.
pretty plain English.
I think, though, that's a really good point when we're talking about building out our FAQs. Like, there's other towns and cities across the state that have come up with, like I'm thinking of Lebanon, for example, that have come up with FAQs, but really scan them and say, okay, these are great FAQs for a town that is already sort of established, right, and on their path, and then back up and say, and just do a scan for language that people might not understand yet. And at the very top of our FAQs say, what is load? You know, what's the
Yeah,
difference
yeah, right.
between aggregation and,
Yeah.
Some
you
kind of
know, a
little dictionary
coalition.
or something
Yeah,
for
You know.
it's
terms.
part of the FAQs.
yeah, yeah.
Glossary of
But it's a
terms.
great point, just back up and just make
Yeah.
sure all of our terms are
Because
defined.
there's so many terms like this in this kind of business.
Absolutely.
That it's very easy for people who are not familiar with it to be
Yeah.
overwhelmed by it.
What level of content will we have on the web when this goes out? So if someone goes to the web to get more information?
Should we turn to that? I think we've got our input on this.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. And Stephanie, thank you so much for, Stephanie's been in contact with the folks that are responsible for printing, so we still need to make sure that, we're almost positive we only have one side, not two side. And it's not clear yet if we can do it in color, but I think it'll be okay to print out in black and white if we need to. So,
I suppose we can do color, right?
If we pay for it. So the
Okay.
printer is getting us a price.
okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
So just out,
Abundant cheap.
just out of,
Yeah.
the committee's budget, if we're, you know, what does that mean? Because we're already piggybacking on the, I'll deal with it. It's not a big deal. We'll figure it out.
You want me to talk to Karen?
No, we'll figure it out.
I'll forward the email from Judith Renaud to you.
Okay.
So you just are on,
Yep.
Counselor and
Well, I do think that having it in color makes a better impression. It looks visually much more inviting, so whatever we can do to make it inviting.
One thing, Becca, is the enabling legislation. I don't know if we are able to alter this, but it's so tiny, I don't know if ultimately it'll be visible in the insert.
Yep.
Well, Becca's got it up in the top paragraph. New Hampshire RSA 53E.
Yeah, but I think this was a
Still
URL,
really
wasn't it?
tiny. We can crop that.
If you can't, if it's not effective, we could scratch it, you know? Or maybe it's just my old eyes, I can't see it that
No,
way.
it's hardly visible.
It's pretty, it's about 6.
But folks can go to, you know, the landing page and get additional information, so.
Yeah.
If it just catches their attention and takes them somewhere, then.
There you go.
it Should be good.
Yep.
So FAQs, is the mailboxes what we can do with?
what Judith said was that the bills go out on a kind of continuous basis, so they don't all hit at one time. So it will be rolling all through June, but before the 29th, which is the critical date. So I can get anything you like on the website whenever you want.
Okay. Well, I think we should shoot for end of May. And in terms of content, I thought the stuff that you shared with us, Kevin, was pretty good. Get your source for that.
This, the Lebanon one?
Yeah, was it 11?
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Becca, did you look at some other?
Yeah, this is the one that I agree. I really like this Lebanon Community Power one. The thing I guess I'm struggling with right now is how much are we straddling describing what community power is and then getting in also to the benefits potentially of being part of the coalition, or do we kind of keep it very like, we are shooting for community power, we may or not, and I'm stealing your language, Kevin, we may or may not end up purchasing through the coalition. Probably will, but I don't know. So how much do we just sort of keep the FAQs quite broad about community aggregation? Because I asked that because the Lebanon one, it gets, you know, number 8, they get into what is Community Power Coalition of New Hampshire.
You could like break it into 2 parts where you just talk about aggregate, you know, what is aggregation, what are the benefits, and then a separate one which you populate as questions arise, and just say, what is it, the CPC and H.
Yep.
Because this is so, appropriately high level for the insert, but we may just pick like 3 or 4 of these Q&As for initially in the website. Because some of these are a little more, because Lebanon is further along around what's their plan entail, and what about net metering, and
And Clinton is deep into it.
so they're far down the road, but just, because we're only giving very high level summit, but if we had, what is community power, and have it be beefy,
I've already
you know,
stolen language from that one anyway,
you know,
so we might as well.
will everyone be
consistent.
required? What's the role of the utility? What are the benefits? I think there's probably 4 or 5 of these Q&As right now that you could get out on the web
Yeah.
to have more substance for folks that click over to our website,
I was just
as opposed to all of them.
check what we have on the page, because it seems to me that we put the original What is Community Power presentation that was made to City Council on the webpage. But let me check. Because in general, I like, as public information officer, to have stuff be as Portsmouth-specific as possible, instead of just lifting Lebanon's.
Yeah.
But that's just me. I am a spear carrier here. I do what I'm told.
Yeah. Well, some of these sections aren't specific to, like Lebanon, they're more specific to what is community power and the benefits, et cetera.
Can I ask sort of an administrative IT question for our page, for the website, city site? Do we have the ability to do like accordion style, when you go on and you click on a question and then the answer, populates? Or would we be putting together a PDF that would be, so a user would go on and double click it or download it?
We have a variety of options, one of which is to load the content on the actual page on a specific FAQs page. Because as it changes and as this committee is really evolving, there will be lots of changes. And to do the PDF requires the Word document, turn it into a PDF, upload it as a PDF, and then link it, instead of just going in and editing the page.
Okay.
But both are possible. And so the way our pages work is that as you've got content on a page, you can have a sidebar directory that will lead you right to that section of the page, or you can have a drop-down menu and have subpages. It's pretty
Lots of
fast.
option. Okay.
Let me see what we have here.
Yeah, I don't think we want to do a PDF because we'd be frozen in time.
Yeah.
Just have to keep it updated.
But to your point, to having the headlines, like what is community power, what are the benefits, what's the role of Eversource, and then you click on that, and then it opens up and gives you the further, if that's the accordion style is what you're,
Okay.
but it seems like there's 4 or 5 of these that we could put out
I agree.
quickly to have for folks that, go over there from this insert.
So what the page has right now, and this is the bottom of the page, is a link to the Community Power website, a link to the work session that was presented to City Council, and then at the bottom, it has the Community Power FAQs. So that's the generic. And then we could put anything you like. And you can't see it as well. On the
there-
right-hand side is a list of all the committee members.
Yeah.
And those FAQs were what the CPC gave us at one of the early presentations.
Oh, right.
For some
Okay.
reason, it opens in the middle of it. Sorry, Council. So it,
Stephanie, where only one person is online,
Yeah,
do you want to
that's
just pull it
us.
up on the,
Where's that you?
do that.
you just collapse it down and then,
Just think how to do that.
you open your Google Chrome?
Lost in my own brain here.
Counselor Tabor, I had a question for you. Sorry, I'm going back to the event now with Portsmouth Smart Growth. Clearly, there's a cap, right, for a number of people that can attend that event. So I'm wondering when folks go to their community site to either like reserve their spot. I'm just wondering if we should add some language like reserve your spot or sign up. Clearly, there'll be a virtual component, so if folks can't actually get there in person or don't want to. So I'm just.
Yeah.
I'm assuming those. I mean, if we're at the gills and people are flowing out the back, that's not the worst thing in the world, but.
It's a good problem.
That's a good problem, but.
So this is what's currently on the
Okay.
page. That's dated June of last year.
I'm just wondering, initially, do we want to have our, have it be more of a Portsmouth content with our,
Right.
what is community power and the benefits, as opposed to, Allison, as opposed to a CPC document?
Can that be archived, that document, so it's there for a resource, but then
It actually,
properly
if-
build out that
If you go backwards on that, and actually, I hate to micromanage, but can you blow it up so it fits full screen?
So
If
what
you
the.
go back to the web, there you go. So that's what's on our site right now.
So that FAQ lives there, and then we've got the meeting videos, and
Thank you.
what some other pages have done is to have buttons. Show you what, wow, it's exactly like the homepage. So we can do these and have a resources button. You could have a link to the CPC's website as a button. We can have
Q&As.
yeah, exactly. So you've got various options in how you format it on the page. We would just add in a bar here.
For my money, if we did have right up front 4 or 5 very relevant FAQs,
Yeah, kind of the foundational questions.
because we know we're going to be driving traffic in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I'd put the CPC NH document into kind of a repository of other documents, as opposed to that's our Q&A source.
Yeah.
But, and Lebanon has no, like, authorship to these. These are, I think, generic
yeah,
Yeah.
questions and answers that we can pick which ones are high level and generic enough for Portsmouth's needs out of the gate.
so how about, Stephanie, if you take that and pick the most relevant FAQ items, localize them, and then maybe we can get on a Zoom and look at.
Becca, it sounded like maybe you did some of that already. I don't want to speak for the committee, but I'm happy to take basics and share it.
Yeah, just this Lebanon FAQs, and I was thinking, I'm sure if we looked on whatever Rye or Exeter has put together, it's probably very similar to this too, but so, no work done on my part on that.
Are you comfortable with that?
Sure, sure.
I suggested a couple of links. There are a couple of EPA sites that I think are really good explanations, and I can forward those to you.
We can add those to the resources.
Yeah.
So if we've got a couple of weeks to work those up. Those are ready for when the traffic lands. It would, I think some follow-throughs I have with Portsmouth Smart Growth will be, how are we going to do reserving tickets? We'll use 3S's reservation system. We'll use.
I circled the ones I think.
Oh, great.
And we need to verify that they can do Zoom. I assume the city can't do off-site Zoom.
Not at a non-city property. We just now have the capability of doing those. We're doing, well, the budget sessions aren't Zoomed, but we can do, just for everybody's information, we can do off-site at the Senior Activity Center, the middle school, and Fire Station number 2 out on Lafayette Road,
Right.
as well as here.
Well, Peter Vandenmark said, "Can you guys do the Zoom?" And I did a quick Heisman. Oh, no, think quick.
The 3S, I have to believe they have the capability, but I don't assume. I will say that they, wearing my former Strawberry Bank hat, when we were doing a cooperative program with them, they did everything. Ticketing, it was a Becoming American series of films, and they did all of the ticketing, they did promotion to all of their own members. These are different times than now, so it's a question of bandwidth for staff, but they did a really nice job as a partner.
I think that's the arrangement that Portsmouth Smart Growth has, but I'll verify. Because we'll need to put that to bed to have, this flyer say how you can book your space. And I think with the mailing, we'll have very good attendance.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tremendous opportunity to be able to use the water bill. What a great way to get it into the hands of 8,000 people.
And I just talked to Peter Britz, and he said that he thought the city did have a booth at Market Square Day, and that would be another opportunity to advertise the event.
Oh, yeah, we could have our FAQs at that, and our flyers. Yeah. Good. Okay, so the tasks ahead are drafting our FAQs, 4 or 5 key FAQs to ready the landing page, and verifying Zoom for the event on the 29th, and checking into how tickets will be managed, or whether it'll just be first come, first serve. We'll see.
I think that from most of the sites that I've attended Zoom meetings, there's usually a registration that you have to go through. So you would, they would have a registration page first, and then you would get a notice with a link saying that you've registered and this is the Zoom attendance. So I don't know if that's what they have, but.
Okay, I'll ask.
Stephanie, do we ever have a feature on the webpage that allows the resident to ask a question?
Yes.
Is that something we would want to consider? Just to start gathering what questions people have, or is that a hornet's nest?
So there are a couple of different things. One is that the committee's page has give us your email and we'll keep you informed. But what some other pages have in addition is a form that lets you direct a question to the committee. Or we can simply refer anyone with a question to the email hotline at City of Portsmouth, all of which come to me, and then I distribute them, either answer the question or distribute the questions to whomever can.
'Cause that could potentially inform future FAQs in terms of what people are interested in. But I don't know.
In case you
It
might
might
want the
create work.
form on the page so that it's.
Well, we could try it, and if it,
You don't get
if it
anything.
overloads,
Pull the plug.
And does Allison know that we're putting her phone number on the water
Yeah.
slide? I'm just kidding.
Blinking red light.
I have to play time cop because I think this room is used at 6. So I think we've got our takeaways for this. we may have a working group meeting after the FAQs are done, and just to check in. But we should turn our attention to the timeline for actually turning on the switch for community power. And just a context to frame it, and Kevin, jump in if I got it wrong. Things are really starting to move with the coalition, and they drafted an initial timeline for the 8 communities that already have aggregation plans. And that timeline is that their energy aggregation plans, which are 30, 40, 50-page documents, are done by July. And the reason they have to be done so early is that they then have to go to the PUC and be reviewed. So Kevin and I talked about, is there any way we could be in the first wave in March of next year? But it's really tough to see us doing an energy aggregation plan by the end of July. Because what's involved is that sections are mandated by statute. We have to start with existing conditions, which means getting our load information from the utility, which can take a long time. Drafting the document, it has 10 or 11 or 12 sections. And then there's a public hearing requirement. It has to have 2 public hearings. And it has to be approved by the governing body. And of course, the council has only 1 meeting in July. So the task of pulling all that together is daunting. And the coalition has slotted us as not in the first wave. They've never seen that as realistic. And we in Dover and some of the others are looking at later than that. So I think when you do a gut check and you say, could we do all that by July 11th? I think we would be biting off more than we could chew. Alice?
Wouldn't it be actually advantageous not to be in the first wave, just to see where people
Bingo.
have gone wrong or gone right or whatever? And not reinvent the wheel, maybe?
Yep. And see how good rollouts are and how tricky rollouts are.
I mean, it's very complex, and they're standing this thing up. And as the counselor said, there's 8 communities, and they're not completing their plans by July. They're done. They just need to tweak them based on some PUC feedback from when they had submitted. 4 of them had been submitted, so they know 3 or 4 things that needed to get adjusted. So 8 of them have been at this for, over a year plus, and then there's another 3 or 4 that are very far along, and so they'd be in the first wave. I did ask a couple of the communities how long kind of it would take from beginning to end if we just kind of went at it, and it was like in the 5-month range from starting, drafting, and the other thing too, I mean, we're talking all about education here. I think to do the right thing, we need to educate folks before we start having public hearings, because it's like putting the cart and the horse in the same spot, and they have so much going on. The reason they need these things completed by the end of July is the rules are supposedly going to be adopted by the PUC at that point in time. And the way this plays out is once the PUC rules are adopted, these plans can be filed with the PUC. They can't be filed prior to. And then the PUC has 60 days. And until the PUC approves all these communities' plans, the communities can't request from the utilities their detailed load data. Right now, we can get that very high level by class, residential, commercial, industrial, but we can't get the confidential customer level data until the EAPs are approved by the PUC, and they need that data to then turn it over to the procurement consultants that they haven't even identified yet in the fall, to then begin the process of procuring load later in the fall, once they know what the utilities' rates are going to be, which aren't until December. And so this whole cascading event to go live by April 1st, back them up to say, okay, the communities that are going to go live on April 1st need to have their plans all buttoned up through their governing bodies by July, because then that sets off a series of cascading events that all have blocks of time. And we talked about it at our meeting the other day. Peter and Councilor Cook weren't here, but there's this huge request for proposal that is out on the street right now that went out April 25th for a whole raft of services, most importantly, the procurement process, but all sorts of services.
Basically, the whole
The whole-
coalition back
Standing up the
shop.
coalition.
The whole kit and caboodle,
Yeah.
because there's going to be a few people on staff, but the operation is sourced. And that'll all, they're looking to have those vendors selected by August, September, and then stood up by October. And then they, a part of that team will handle the procurement process. So that's why they're saying, this is, while April 1st sounds like it's a long way away, the series of events that need to play out are substantial.
Is there documentation regarding those series of events so that we can sort of figure out a timeline ourselves?
Sure, yeah, yep. The document that the counselor sent out today was from a meeting yesterday that talked about the critical success events. And this is really focusing on the towns and cities that are going live, to let them know we need to get busy to get all these things done. So the events are in that PowerPoint presentation. But for us, as Portsmouth, while we're working on the education, starting to get that off the ground, the next step is for us to request from Eversource our high-level utility data, because we put that into the EAP, and then we need to start working on our energy aggregation plan at whatever pace, whatever speed we want to, and then once that plan is developed, which a lot of it, Allison, is kind of plug and play. They gave us the template. It's I don't know, 40, 50 pages. My guess is probably 80%, 90% of it is a plug and play, putting Portsmouth data into it. But then there's stuff that we would tailor around
Right.
our goals from a city. And then once we have our EAP, as we were saying, is then public hearings, and then approval, and then we file it with the PUC. So the next kind of critical path activity, the easy one is to request the data from Eversource. That's just a form letter that has to be signed by the counselor or Karen. But then is to start working on our aggregation plan at whatever pace we want to.
And leading off the aggregation plan, I think the towns who've done it right have taken the time to say, these are our goals.
Yes. Yep.
And those
Yes.
guide the aggregation plan. So I think that's a discussion we, as a body, need to have. I think drafting the document, there's a lot of language that CPCNH can provide. We can also look at other towns. I think that's, Rye's got a nice one, Lebanon's got a nice one. But deciding our goals, I think is our step.
Yeah, and I think that those goals would probably feed right into the City of Portsmouth's Climate Action Plan.
Right. Right. And we want to be sure to align with that.
Yeah.
That's very important.
And there's 4 critical documents that they are going to be looking to the consultants that they bring on by like September to work on. One's the cost-sharing agreement, in terms of how the cost of this operation is going to flow back to all the communities. The risk management, which is all around procurement. There's a big policy around building up the reserve, and then there's a 4th that slips my mind. But those don't even exist right now, and those are the operational underpinnings for this organization that are going to get developed in the fall. So, to your point, Allison, there's some beauty to being kind of a fast follower to this exercise and not be,
The leading, bleeding edge.
if we, you and I chat at concert, if we were at this for the past 12 months, I think we'd certainly be all for
we'd be
getting in the
clawing
first
around.
wave and taking our lumps.
Well, Cliff
But-
has probably been at it for years.
Yeah.
But I was also going to underscore exactly what you're getting at is that the initial 8 towns that have prepared for months now, or maybe years, the PUC has never done this before either. So once we see the whole process with the PUC and how they're going to adopt the rules from these new bills that were passed, that's going to make it smoother for everybody else later on. Then they'll have a routine. They'll know what they're looking for. They'll have some experience with it, whereas the first 8 towns are the guinea pigs. And it's going to probably take longer for them than for other towns just because the PUC has not done it before. So
One thing, Peter, I wanted to mention to you is Dover, while they've been at it for a long time, they've decided, at least a week ago, their deputy city manager, Chris Parker, mentioned that they're not planning to go live in the first wave because they have municipal power contracts that go out for another year or so. And they didn't think it was the appropriate thing to say, okay, residents of Dover, you guys join this aggregation, but the municipal accounts are not going to join until at a later point in time. So they want to sync up their municipal
So,
contracts and the rest of.
so Kevin, that's a really good point.
Yep.
And, we are getting ready to go out to bid for our power procurement for future. We're currently locked in for the 23, what they call 22-23 period. And we were very fortunate, we locked in 2 years ago because, the prices are now significantly greater than, we would have gotten clobbered. My concern about tying our procurement to the CPCNH schedule is that their schedule for procurement is not consistent with our budget development. So, I think over time, we can achieve the same goals with procuring outside of CPCNH and outside of the aggregation approach by council just being clear that this is what, either through
Policy.
the credit, what are they?
Rex.
RECs, and what type of RECs. And, based on that, we would purchase those, and we could purchase those independent of our power purchase, which is still the 22% mix, which is mandated by the state. Given the energy markets and the pressures on, as you may know, electricity is mainly generated by natural gas in New England. The natural gas is an international commodity. It's not a local commodity anymore. And what's going on in Europe at the moment is creating, over, I think, 40% of our natural gas goes abroad right now, and they're looking to increase that amount. So we're competing in that market. So what does that say? It says that natural gas prices are going to continue to go up, which means the bulk of electricity generation is from natural gas, which the electricity prices are going to continue to go up. It really makes it competitive for solar and wind and stuff like that, which is great because there's incentive to drive in that direction. But in the near term, being responsible for municipal power procurement, I'm doing multiple things. I'm trying to keep budgets in line. Fortunately, this year we're not getting a major hit as a result of this. We're very fortunate, but what I want to try to do is set it up for next year, 23, 24, 24, 25. So, you know, that gives us, similar to Dover, it gives us a period of time where we would let other things play out. And the question of whether municipality ties to this as well is a question, you know. I don't anticipate large commercial or industrial users to participate in this, because they play the market. If they can save money, they're going to opt in and they're going to opt out, and it's going to ruin the CPC&H model if you have people popping in and out. It's really about stability and predictability for the procurement side of things, because you want to be able to sell that constant load.
Yeah, I think it's residents and small businesses.
Yeah. Yep. The people who are, you know, tied, that aren't in the market already. So I understand what they're doing. You know, obviously I spend a lot of time thinking about budgets and I get anxious. That's why we, you know, risk management, when we start talking about that and how they do the procurement, I was just like, oh God, this is, you know, how are they going to buy stuff ahead of time and then have that power available now? You know, they're not buying in the future, they're buying real-time power if they want to stand it up within a short time frame. And when you enter in the market in that short time frame, you're at you know, that's a premium.
So
And the April market is better, but, you know, by that time, we've locked in our budgets.
Yep.
but I think our next program of work is to start that 5-month process
Yeah.
of doing our aggregation plan. And it seems to me the logical place to start is for us as a committee to meet and set our goals or work on the goals that we want to drive that plan. And we should get input from the sustainability folks and maybe even the council. And then get the load data, which is a key element of the plan, and then go through the step-by-step process of writing it. I'm wondering, Peter and Kevin, if you guys could just write down what are the milestones in doing an aggregation plan, and what kind of timeline we might see for that. And that could, then we could meet and talk about the goals, having that, you know, rough timeline.
As far as the timeline to pull the aggregation plan together?
Yeah,
Yeah,
just frame that work.
okay.
And, you know, we could meet again so that we could hear from you guys. What do you think the time frame is? What's the best use of our resources to do that? And have a session working on our goals. How does
And that would
how
be
does
going
that
at
sound?
at a pace that's like a regional, because, you know, Cliff or April or somebody from the CPC would say, if, you know, we work day and night, we could still get this done quickly. But we're saying go at it at a reasonable pace this summer.
Summer and fall.
Yeah, summer, fall, yeah.
I mean, getting,
To be able to submit to PUC.
Because as soon as the rules are ready, and the rules are supposed to be ready in July, if we were ready in August, or if we were ready in September, at any point in time, once the city council signs off on our EAP, then we can submit the plan to the utility.
You know, it's not
But
even-
we would then, we're not in the life cycle, though, of going live, because if we're going to go with CPC for supply, they're looking at like April, May, or then I think it's September, October. So, because there's 2 sweet spots during the year, given how it ties with the utility purchase. They want to know what the utilities rate's going to be for the next 6 months
before they set their rates.
to beat it.
There's no guarantee incidentally that the PUC is going to do it in July.
Right, they might not adopt
PUC
it.
is, the
It could stall.
PUC
Yeah.
is in disarray right now because of this integration with the Department of Energy. So we used to have a PUC, we used to have Department of Energy, we used to have, no Department of Energy, we had the Department of Environmental Services, and there was no Department of Energy. The Department of Energy is still restructuring itself right now, and it wants to absorb the PUC within itself. And it was clear before, and Don Kreis, the consumer advocate, was part of the PUC, but they were the regulatory agency, and the policies were set somewhere else. But now, because there's a Department of Energy that's being given all kinds of responsibilities, and it's trying to absorb some of the PUC functions, like I said, I'm not as sure, I'm not that confident that they will actually do what they think they want it to do by July, just because they're not very organized right now. So that might,
Yeah.
it might drag on a little bit.
Yeah.
It will happen, but
Yeah.
I can't even get an org chart of the Department of Energy, and I'm on the Science Technology Committee.
Well, that's an insight.
And we can't even get the
Scary insight.
responsibilities, who's taking what.
Peter, my skeptical self says the reason they wanted to do that is because of revenues that they could pay for, they could generate revenues to pay for their operations.
Yes, they're doing that too. They're shifting around the expenses and the revenues as they do this.
Classic New Hampshire government. Where they,
And you're already hearing complaints of people who are saying our department's not going to get enough funding for what we're supposed to do. So that's why I'm just saying, and it's nice if they could do it by July, but they've made promises before and are way off the mark. And this is now in a condition where they're just sorting things out.
Yeah.
Well, that's another reason not to kill ourselves to do anything by
Yeah,
July.
that's very true. We should just stick to our own plodding ways.
But I think the question we need to answer is, what are the steps in doing an EAP? And how do we see those falling on the calendar?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. I can take a shot at that.
And there's an election coming up, too, which doesn't help. The governor's up for reelection, for example.
Peter, your thoughts on that?
on what?
On figuring out our next steps with the,
If Kevin is gracious enough to take a stab at it, I am, as you can imagine, buried.
budget time.
It's budget time, but it's not just budget, it's construction time. It's, we are,
Yeah.
you're stretched very thin.
Okay.
I can draft stuff up and bounce it off you, and
Yeah.
then we can submit it for
Yeah, if
review.
you guys can confer, I think that would be
That would be great.
on your way to your next CPCNH meeting in the car. Okay, well, I think that's our next program of work, and we've got this.
Sounds good.
We've got the last turn on this to do, and a few tasks to follow up on, but the event's coming.
We'll edit that as quickly as I can. We'll circulate it and then have the Portsmouth Smart Growth group look at it and make sure they're okay with
Yep.
how we've
I've given them
positioned it.
I've given them one look at it,
Perfect.
and that's when they said, oh, we got to do Zoom, don't we? So,
The one thing that we do have to do, and we have plenty of time, is the joint powers agreement. They made a modification to that at the annual meeting, and they want all of the communities that have already signed off on the JPA to bring it back before their city council for reapproval.
okay.
Yeah, but
And
it's,
I can put that under my name and have Bob
Yeah.
do a legal review, and,
yeah.
okay.
Is it a minor?
Yeah, it's minor. They had language in the JPA that said they can only make changes to that document at their annual meeting, and they said there's no basis for that, so they have language that says they can make changes to the JPA anytime with board approval, and they suspect, given everything that's going on right now, they're going to want to make some changes here and there, so they didn't want to be locked into it was only on an annual basis, so they just changed some text. But even something that benign apparently has to go back before all the governing bodies to approve.
Next meeting, I think our next meeting is quite far off, the way I set up the calendar, but thinking is, if you guys outline the next steps and have how they would fall on the calendar, we could convene this committee to work on goals. And that might be best after the June event. Maybe. Maybe first, well, we don't want to do July 4th week, but maybe the week after July 4th, something like that.
It could be Portsmouth specific, so Stephanie has that one.
One thing, Counselor, I don't know, is we might want to formally let
As I mentioned earlier, there's
Cliff
that
know
would be a prime opportunity
that we're
to highlight.
not anticipating to be in wave one.
Tell them about the event.
Yeah.
So we might,
I think he might push back on it, saying you guys could do it if you really tried. It's my reading the tea leaves. But,
I think he'd like to.
yeah, well, they want our
Like
load.
you.
I don't think they really care about, they want our load to be in the procurement. That's, you know, which I understand.
Yeah.
But I think there's still, you know, it's not nailed down that we're considering to be in the subsequent wave.
When are the RFPs coming in?
They're due June 15th.
15th?
It's going to play out over the summer. And then they're also, Peter and Councilor Cook, they're looking to hire a CEO or an executive director by sometime later in the summer, I think, to have them on board, he or she on board, to help oversee the contracts when they get implemented in the October timeframe.
That'd be great, yeah.
I can't even imagine trying to get any of this, getting it in place for us by July. I just can't imagine meeting that schedule, so.
No.
Plus all like the stakeholder engagement we've talked
Yeah,
about
that's
wanting to do, and,
Yeah.
you know, apart from the things that we have to do with public hearings and putting together the plan itself, but then all the sort of other people we want to bring along with us, you know?
Yeah, I think we've got to have the information, the awareness level come up, the top-of-mind awareness
Mhm.
has to be built up so that
Mhm.
when we talk about this and we go out for hearings.
We also talked, in addition to the Market Square, we talked about the farmers market, trying to help, you know, get news out through that as well. So that's something that the manager's there monthly,
Okay.
but they've indicated that, you know, there's stall space for other types of activities.
Great.
So the printer is printing out a certain number to go into the mailing, so we should have additional.
Yeah, we could
printing.
Yeah.
add this.
Yep.
Karen could hand it out if she wanted it.
Yeah.
Farmer's market.
So how
If
do we
it's,
go about
if it's in
getting
the
more
budget,
printed?
can we have more printed of those?
I'm not sure how we were planning on
Like
paying for it.
water, sewer,
Might be
and,
better to just take the same PDF to Southport or something
Okay.
and have them print it. Because
Okay.
I think, the way I'm imagining the bill is that they print the bill and this page, so you've got
Right.
this long strip of bill page, bill page, bill page, and then
Yeah,
they
yeah.
slice
Collate
it,
it,
mail
yeah.
it.
yeah,
That could
Yeah,
be
sure.
imaginary, but I think that's how it works.
okay. That makes sense.
All right.
But I will ask that question.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll get back to everybody with a date in July for us to convene and work on goals. Mark your calendar for June 29th.
Yeah. Get ready to answer the phone and, answer questions.
So
Make sure my
sorry
kid doesn't
about
answer
your
it.
number
Yeah.
ending up on that page.
You're like, everyone's like, this.
I know. I know.